Is Robert unmuted?
All right. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, I'm not sure what you mean by comments. Facebook comments, or?
No, the chat comments inside of Zoom.
Oh, okay.
I think that's where Clark's going, right, Clark?
Let me see. Well, I don't see any comments yet. Just word. Okay.
So Clark, to be clear, what you're asking is you're wondering if we think it's beneficial to keep recording these sessions and posting them so that all 4,400 people can see, regardless of whether they're involved right this minute. Correct?
Yeah, that's. I'll answer for Clark. I don't know what his audio problem is. Yeah, that's what he's asking.
Okay. Yeah, I think right now it is beneficial. We have such little participation as it is. I think maybe posting things like this would help spur on more people to get involved if they feel like it's a beneficial conversation to be part of. So I think you need to put that in front of everybody in order to establish more of a buy-in.
Okay. I think I see both sides. We have been doing this for over 2 years, and I think that's what's led to our growth. I think many people are very comfortable just watching and not contributing for, I don't know, fear of it coming back to them in their own market through adjusters or competition who don't have the best intentions. But it's something we've been kicked off. I think the right answer is. But there are a lot of people who lurk. I know Clark meets people every week that say, first thing I read every morning. I've been reading for years, but I never say anything. Yeah. And we need to get beyond that. This is not my comfort zone. It's not Clark's comfort zone either. But this is what's required of us right now. So
I think a lot of that boils down to there is still a certain level of aggression from most folks who are commenting, debating whether or not what's being said is right or wrong, rather than focusing on helping to improve. It's more of a, let me show you how much I know atmosphere.
Yep.
And that's probably keeping people from getting involved because they're afraid they're going to be grilled the second they post something.
Yeah. I was just looking at member requests, and when you join the group, you have to answer 3 questions, and so the third question is about what can you contribute. And 2 of the last member requests, they said almost the exact same thing. I want to observe for a while before I try to contribute, and I get it. I get that. Even restorers in my own market, only recently have they been contributing to the conversation in the main group, and then we have a separate Facebook group for our chapter, and it's rare that people post. And there's some who are very well respected in our area that are not comfortable speaking in front of people or speaking online in front of people. So I get it. I guess we've lost Clark. Clark, you there? Oh, he's muted himself. Okay, so we only have I only have plans for a couple topics tonight. First thing I'd like to talk about, and I'm not going to go through the commitments. We did recently publish new commitments, and if you haven't read them yet, please do. They're in the info section of the group, and Clark's posted them half a dozen times. Let me sidetrack for a second. On the commitments, did anyone have feedback on those that they'd like to share? And why don't you raise your hand so I can unmute you if you can't unmute yourself. Which means I got to get this screen out of the way. Oh, Clark, you're back? Good. Parker, are you trying to say something? Better put your eyes on the road. Okay. All right. Clark, did you want to say anything on new commitments that were published? No. Okay. Nikki's. Are you frozen?
Yeah, I'm kind of quirky and frozen right now. I'm probably going to have to restart. No, I mean, I assume with no comments and no feedback that everybody just loves them. And I guess I will address kind of what I could hear the back and forth. It was really a lot of good points, but I want to kind of address, this group this is Jennifer's group. This is Parker's group and Kristen's. And sometimes, and it's just probably more of an internal fatigue, but I feel like we're up here like putting on a show, like we're expected to always have something to say. I start thinking about the roundtable the day before, but then I don't think about stuff I need to be thinking about, like maybe for my business or something else. So I would love a larger number of contributors, and I'm giving permission to everyone. You don't need permission to say, hey, I want to host a roundtable. I want to talk about a big crazy topic this week or something. I really, really, really want to continue to send the message that engagement is what got us here. And as we've grown bigger, it's becoming a little echo chamber with just a couple of voices, and it's growing. But I just want to, there's probably some really, really, really good ideas out there that we're not hearing. And because of what you said, people are a little intimidated, and it's a daunting, to get in front of the crowd. But so that's why I wanted to just sit here, and I didn't plan to be quiet because my screen froze, and I just planned to be quiet and just kind of let the flow go. But I certainly see points. I don't want to keep this from anybody, and I just went ahead and put this thing live on Facebook. So hello, I think I did. Hello, Facebook world, kinda. We are live like Frankenstein, but it's not working. So I'm just not having technical difficulties today. So that's all I'll say is I don't want to keep this from anybody, but I do want to encourage more participation by those to come in here and say something instead of, I'm like everybody else. I don't like to be watched and not see who's watching sometimes. It's kind of a weird, creepy feeling to me.
That is fair.
But it happens. And it's what we are, and it's all for good reason. So I'm good with whatever. I just trying to encourage and come up with new creative ways to push and prod and try and fail and succeed and stuff. So I'm down like chicken wings.
I don't mind being watched. I think that's okay.
Well, but we're all different. We're not all Parkers. Parker who sits in the back of the room. No, I'm kidding. No, we were talking about you today, Parker, in Sweets class.
Didn't I see you laying on the hood of a car? I mean, that says something about.
In speech class, probably doesn't get it. They don't need it.
The other thing you have to consider is if you have 4,000 people, in any organization, there's only 10% that do anything anyway. So if 4,000 is a big number and 10% is the average, then you can only really expect that 400 people are going to participate.
Jennifer, I don't do with averages. I exceed. I blow the top off of those things. I mean, I'm not going for middle ground.
Okay.
I know what you mean.
You have to have realistic expectations.
I think the other thing we need to keep in mind is we need to be pushing people off Facebook and onto air. And if we keep making everything accessible and free on Facebook, they don't even have to call in and be part of the chat. They can just watch the video extremely passively online. What value is there in getting off that platform and onto the air platform?
Fair enough.
We can always put a screenshot of the video on the Facebook page with a link to air.
Right. Good idea.
Well, hey, John Grubb, we just had an hour-long conversation about this, didn't we? Are there some?
We sure did.
Are there some highlights? I mean, is that a real concern? That why are we trying to build air and why are we trying to disregard Facebook? Is that a generic concern with some people, or a question about why?
I don't know. No one has ever no one has ever come to me or emailed me or messaged me and voiced a concern about our messaging of pushing people to air. But this is a good segue talking about chapters. So here I'm in East Idaho. I'm in Idaho Falls, Idaho, and we've got a thriving chapter of mostly non-air members, and that's going to change. We're going to make a big call for, hey, this is a prerequisite. You have to join air. And I have had to become an apologist for why they need to join air. And so I've described it like this, and I feel like I have looked at this from multiple angles for about 8 months. I think when you visited me last November, I think that's when we really argued and argued both points of view on this as we were, talking about chapter membership. So I look at it like this. We are poised to do two things. We're poised to educate, and that is 3D, in-person, face-to-face, and that's online. And we are also poised to create accountability through community. And that is the purpose. That is one of the overarching purposes of the chapters. And here's why. This tenet of ours that we do not believe in competition is something that me, Clark, Andy, admins, mods, you probably as well have gotten pushback on. Well, of course I believe in competition. It's the American way. And yeah, there's competition. It's fine to compete. We compete all the time. I'm highly competitive by nature, as you can see by my Xbox headset. The pushback I give, and it came from one particular conversation where a guy called me who's in a very, very tiny market, and he said, but I want to agree with that, but what about the hacks? And I said, okay, good point. They're not your competition, and here's why. And I laid out what typically happens to hacks and crooks in our business over time. They get sued out of existence. They get locked up. Something happens to them. They don't typically have a 20, 30, 40-year career in this business if they're crooked, right? The way we accelerate that is by actually bringing people together, saying, here, I'm going to open the door for you. I want you to come in, join us, and let's get to know each other and work together, because people always show their true colors, and they will in a community like that. So we include everybody, and the hacks are going to expose themselves, and that's one way that we elevate the standards of our industry. Just really good restorers working together and saying, hey, this is the standard, hey, I see you do it that way. There's a much safer way to do it. There's a much safer way. I'll rabbit trail. I was talking to a restorer in my market today, and he was job sharing with another highly skilled restorer in his market on a very, very large loss. One company had about 3 employees plus a supervisor, and one had 5 plus a supervisor. And he said, I walked in and I realized all my guys were wearing respirators and none of his guys were wearing respirators. And he said, you couldn't see across the room. It was so thick with dust. And he said, they just, they're cowboys. They think they don't need to protect themselves. So he went to this owner and said, hey, I just want to encourage you. You have a responsibility to your employees. And that's a great example of really good restorers just holding each other accountable and raising that bar ever so slightly. That one conversation may prevent one of those techs from some serious health issue down the road. So the sense of community with the purpose of accountability is what we're really about in this chapter thing. Now the problem is, if there's no entity, if there's no buy-in to that entity, what happens when that hack exposes himself and the chapter needs to get rid of the hack from the chapter? Well, if there's no entity, there's nothing to kick him out of. There's nothing to prevent him from sticking around, poaching employees, poaching clients. And so that's why there has to be this structure of an organization that, you pay for. You pay for, so we can do things like fly Clark all around the country to build support and encourage you guys and teach. So we can bring David Hodge to events and get him to speak and educate us. So that is my argument for, here's why we need chapters, and here's why you got to pay $40 a month to be in a chapter. So I'm sure at least one of you disagrees with me, or at least has concerns, because Clark and I did spend an hour on the phone with someone with concerns right before this call, and I'm happy to hear them. Go for it. Clark, you got to unmute people, by the way.
Yeah. I think everybody can unmute themselves, right?
I can unmute. Hear me?
Okay. Yeah, Bob, we can hear you.
Well,
Hey.
I say it. I agree with what you're saying. It's not an argument. That's a fact. That's just the way it is. If you want value, you're going to have to pay for it.
Thank you, Bob. Hold on, I'm letting some people in here. Yeah, those were some of the things we talked about, Bob. I will tell you that much of the creation from AIR came from feedback of a large number of rebels saying, you know, what's next? How do we raise this platform, which is kind of uncontrolled and kind of say anything you want to with no accountability? How do we get into a room of better people? Doesn't mean that people on Facebook don't belong there, but it might be a, what do we call it, a lounge or a gateway? Facebook group may be where you come the first time and say, what are you about? Let's see if we're aligned. But there's got to be an investment, and it's not a salary. I've said it before. Nobody's drawing a salary off of AIR. You know, listen to chapters. They want to have lunches. They want to rent a hotel room instead of somebody's business to have a group, or not a hotel room, but a conference room. Money's required. I gave scholarship. We gave a couple seats away to some classes this week. That came out of funds that we've got from AIR. There's obviously the website. Robert gave me a bunch of feedback today on some development stuff on our group. Every time I call our web guy, it's going to cost me what, $250 maybe? You know, something. It's got to come from somewhere. But what does BNI cost? Who's a part of BNI? Kristen, what does BNI cost a year?
BNI a year is $599 plus whatever your venue fee is. My group is $60 a month on top of that.
Wow.
Worth every penny.
Right.
By the way.
Okay.
And you would say it's sort of an exclusive organization, right?
It's an extremely exclusive organization. I'm on the membership committee. We vet everybody. We check references. We interview them. We interview the people they work with. We have a strict protocol. They have to do educational opportunities. They have to meet with everybody in the group. There's all these rules and guides, extremely structured. And that's why it works.
Don't they have to bring 2 people to every meeting?
No, you should average 1 guest a month. I never bring a guest.
Oh.
But
what would that be like if it were free, Kristen?
there would be no value in if it was free. Or if they just allowed anybody in, there wouldn't be any value. One of the perks of BNI is there's only 1 seat per category. So I'm the only restoration contractor allowed in my chapter. There's only 1 dentist, there's 1 lawyer, there's 1, nutritionist.
So BNI has a primary of lead referrals, but secondary, you are trying to improve the community a little bit, right? I mean, is that true? You are. James, what is your experience? I saw you raise your hand, James Groves.
Yeah, we're in several BNIs as a company, and it provides a great resource. If it was free, there's a lot of free leads groups that we do go to.
Yeah.
I gotta tell you, I don't really give a rip about them as much as I do my BNI group. We become a family, and being able to refer each other and just kind of help each other grow our businesses is the way to go. I like the idea of the roundtables inside of AIR, and I almost like them specific to the groups that we're a member of. Okay, and I was just while I got the microphone here for a second, I was talking with a friend of mine. He's like, well, why would I be in AIR? There's no content on it yet. That's the problem, is that there's no content on it because none of people are in it. So kind of a catch-22. I want to be part of a group and make sure I'm on here to entice more people from showing up. So if we're in an IH group or whatever type of group we're going to be in, if we're able to have a roundtable like this specifically for mold or specifically for water mitt, or it might even increase our knowledge even better.
But James, let me speak to that, and I'll give you all a little insider trading. Clark asked me a week or 2 ago. Clark always questions our messaging. Clark always questions his messaging. Are we saying the right thing? Are we saying it the right way? And that's Clark wanting to perfect the message, right? And he and I disagree about if our messaging's bad, but it's a good disagreement. So he asked this regarding error messaging and pushback, and why aren't people just freaking pulling the trigger on this thing? And so I put it like this: maybe AIR as a platform is a freebie. It's a perk of AIR membership. AIR membership equals chapters. AIR membership equals inclusion into this exclusive restoration community. I don't say that from like an arrogant standpoint of, oh, look how cool we are. But James, you're absolutely right. The platform only exists, and we knew this back in August and September of last year when we were just beginning to storyboard what this platform would look like. We knew that it relied on restorers, on people to go in there and have conversations and move those conversations from Facebook onto the platform. And while the money that we've invested in the platform, I am still confident is a fantastic investment, because nothing like it exists in the world. We got to have bodies in there. So if we talk trade association and chapter membership, and yeah, maybe group discounts on things and stuff like that. Everything I loved about the franchising world, but without all those strings attached, is how I've articulated it a few times. And then AIR as a platform is just, that's a perk. You get this login to the site that there's educational content and private chat rooms, and everybody's vetted, and we know that there's not going to be an adjuster out to get you trying to read your stuff. That's how I've begun to look at it, or how I have suggested that we begin looking at it. And I am confident that before too long we'll have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of folks in there having those same conversations. It's just going to take people talking about it, and other people just stop being passive and pull the trigger.
You know what, I do worry. I don't worry about our messaging. I just always want to improve. And we have come up, if there's times in our growth trajectory that we have asked the hard questions of people, and we have found out, put your ego aside, we have found out that we were going a little off course, and we were course corrected by what a mass or a small group of people have said this would be more valuable. And we have tried as best we could to write that over. We've reinvented ourselves. And I think that's what, the problem we have, and John, I think Andy actually said this one, we don't have a template or a model that we're trying to follow. Nothing, we could easily say we want to be like BNI or NRA or RIA or any one group, but I think that would just be another thing like everybody's seen before. So we really ask, Bob Timmel and Chris Lowelke and Parker. I listen to Parker all the time, and Scott Peterson's on the call. He's got some. Scott Peterson has some things to say, but it's really just empowering a lot more voices. But I only worry because I want to make sure we don't. It's easy to get this world with all this content that we're doing. It's easy to get unfocused on the things and start listening to voices that might not even be there. So but what we said on the call earlier, John, was we're like a giraffe that doesn't have his legs under it yet. We know we're going to be able to stand up, and we know we're going to be tall, but right now we're just kind of funky. We're still in that really early age where we try to get up and it falls down, but we know we can get back up. So, and then the other reason, and I'll mute it because I see Chad Turkis on here, my hero. 2 days ago, and I'm glad are you still, Scott Peterson's here? 2 days ago, Scott made a video, and I wasn't irritated. Sometimes when one or a few, and it kind of goes in waves through the month, where adjusters will just try, like they all purge out their emails and their reviews at the same time and really get everybody's anxiety up. And all of a sudden, everybody's like, we need to band together and do something about this. And I just want to say, wow, where have we been for 2 years? What have we been trying to do? We built something. Let's get involved with that. And to Parker's view is the RIA has existed. Let's all get behind that too. There are reasons we aren't behind certain things and that we are in for others. And I think that's why I question, is the messaging right? Are we hitting the right buttons? Are we articulating for different generations, millennials versus middle-aged versus older? And then in that case, we're never really going to win. But if we bring in delegates from each generation to be spokespeople for this group, I think we can bring those people in. So that's my 2 cents.
I wonder if it's not an issue of attempting to get all of the demographics reached as far as age and experience, as much as it is that so many of that 4,400 have not completely bought into the idea that they want to be independent of programs.
Mm-hmm.
So many of them are still so heavily dependent on that for their work that is what is hindering them from making a further commitment to step away from that because of the impact that it's going to have on them and their families.
Yeah, I would agree with that. What I have done for the past 10 years is talk to restorers every single day. I have talked to thousands of restorers, and everybody, there are many who purged themselves from program work years ago. Everyone I've ever talked to on program work, with maybe an exception, says I have to get off program work. So there's definitely that fear. There's a member in our group that runs an incredibly successful restoration company, and up until recently, about 90% of his business was program work. But he's known for years that he has needed to get off the program, and he's doing the hard work to get off those programs. And he is utterly convinced he has to rid himself of program work. So yeah, there's definitely that fear, and there's definitely a little lack of buy-in. And then some people, I talked to a guy yesterday who left the group about 1.5 years ago, and I said, why? And he's like, I don't know. I felt like I got what I came there for. And I'm like, well, what does that mean? And I told him to get back in there, and he joined back up. So, there is a portion of folks who just will always lurk and never contribute. And, maybe they're not vampires, but for Pete's sake, contribute every once in a while.
I have a question for Cal on your statement, Cal. Do you find that this group is a this or that if you are heavily on programs, that there may be no value other than, that would be a question. Are we polarizing to people that are still heavy into that? Is that a fair question?
I think that's a good question to ask. I don't think it's polarizing per se, but we have to look at what our goals are, and those goals do stand in contradiction to their main source of income, which is going to cause a conflict.
You're right.
We've got to find out how can we. I think the first step is just coming up with a list of things that we can all agree on and work towards to influence the insurance industry and how we do our jobs, and hopefully build upon that to seeing that maybe we can survive doing things this way and not need to be on a program where somebody else is telling us how to do our job.
Peter,
I think that's where. Go ahead.
Go ahead. I was going to say, we had some chats here. Go ahead, John.
I was going to say, I think that's where the FAQs, if we publish those FAQs, that may help relieve some of that thought or theory out there.
Okay.
Yeah, listen, as a new restorer in the industry, this group has solidified in our brains the direction we want to go. Being able to stay away from programs, we're still fairly new, so getting on a program would take a ton of time and money and energy. And after all the countless feedback that we've gotten from this group, as a company, we've decided that it's probably not in our best interest to get on those programs. So it's allowed us to join relationship building programs like the Rebels, like BNI, like other groups. So the counsel of this group has benefited my company directly because it stopped us from even having those same horror stories that people complain about every day.
Hey guys, go ahead.
Sorry, Clark. What I think would be beneficial is if we highlighted the fact that whatever side of the aisle you're on, we're all facing the same thing. When I was at Champion and we were on program work, we would still be banging our head against the wall because reviewers were fighting us on stuff that we knew needed to be on there. So the fact that you're on the program, it doesn't make you immune to fighting the same struggles that we're already fighting. Maybe if we could highlight the perks of not being tied to that a little bit better, then it would make it more appealing.
I think that's a good idea.
You know, I like that, Cal. So I'm in a unique position because I'm more of an advisor and coach to a lot of people. I don't have a lot of clients, but I get a lot of phone calls about, hey, can you help us with this situation? And sometimes I cannot. And a lot of times it comes down to we are heavy programming and we want to get on more of them until you start really pulling back and talking about the numbers and why that doesn't make sense. But let me draw a little story here real quick. How you doing, Chad? Let me draw a little story here. A tale of two cities. Let's take two different contractors. And one, let's just say ABC Restoration started up summer of 2018 of last year. Let's use James as one and John May as another. John gets into the business last year as an independent or not. It doesn't matter. Jumps into this industry because he saw from a distance, it looks like this is a lot of money, a lot of profit. You guys make money while you're sleeping. You've got big trucks with smokestacks coming out of the back of the truck, and I've seen some Rolexes, and I'm on a piece of that, regardless that that's probably a guy that's been in business 20 years. And they get started, and they're so laser beam focused, and they just are in their business. Never heard of the Rebels, went to an ICRC WRT class, which any instructors here watching, you're not really ready after you see that, right? It doesn't teach you much. And then you take James, and I'm just going to use James because he just put himself out there. He started last year to walk into an encyclopedia, if you will, Google specifically a page of restoration professionals who have probably made every mistake a couple of times and have been open to say, don't do this. This might happen. I can't guarantee it. So you've got two companies who don't have the same shot. One's going to be a couple of years ahead. I would say the guy that doesn't know about the Rebels, he finds it 4 years later. If he knows his numbers, he's going to sit there and count how much money he's lost. There's the value of air, right? And yes, that's Rebel Group maybe, but the next level, and air hadn't even touched what I think it's going to be. I really do think that this is going to be a different conversation this time next year, if I'm right. But I think we talked about that on our hour-long call today is if I'm a new restorer and I'm breaking into this, I bet there are people in franchises say, y'all have taught me a lot more than my franchise group has ever taught me about. John just rolled his eyes at me. So that's one, but I don't know how to articulate that into a message, a story or anything like that. And that's just not my strength. Hey, Scott, did you want to grab the mic, Scott Peterson, now that you've got a little bit of time?
Yeah, it's about the background noise.
It's all right.
All right. Yeah, I mean, I guess it's just a follow-up to that last video was, maybe just taking that conversation to this platform, to the RoundTable. It wasn't a hit to where I didn't think anybody was doing anything about the pushback that the carriers are doing. Obviously, we're all fighting that, but I think the focus almost got redirected to the big things with Ed Cross and what RIA is doing. Like, let them go after these big issues, but there's so many little issues that we can bring to the table on a weekly conversation about how to combat that, because I think a lot of people just don't know how to respond to the carriers on just the BS pushback, so they just gave in. And a lot of it's like like, you know, it's $30, it's $100. And again, as I said in the video, it's not, don't give them anything. You know, don't just stand in your way and just be like, okay, that's it. I'm not going to, you know, my invoice, I'm not going to concede on nothing. I'm not saying you have to be that way, but when they're trying to fight back and push back obvious things, just like, for example, the one that we got was just not paying plastic or masking or containment when you're doing texture and paint. It's just a ridiculous statement. We're not paying PPE on a Cat 2 or Cat 3 law, calling it a cost of doing business. Obviously, there's enough people that are rolling over, which is why they continue these arguments.
Yeah.
So how can we bring that to a weekly meeting and get people that are really good at fighting that and overcoming those objections to help everybody else? Because if we all start pushing back and winning, some of those objections will start going away. Some of them.
You're muted.
That's a good point, and you're right. Ed Cross is not going to solve that particular problem. That's
a waste of time.
It's almost too micro. He's working on. He's going to have to start on things that they can bite off and chew. I agree with you, but here comes Scott. You haven't joined AIR. Start a group called How to Deal with Adjusters Group, and you invite in as many people or anybody that wants to participate. We have to act. We did build something, and I know I don't want, you know, you and I we talked a little earlier, and I'm glad you're saying it, but I want the message to be that we want the same thing, and we talk about it all the time during the group, and people don't see it because it's Facebook. But I don't have the answer, but I will tell you the first start. Listen, I pay for air myself. I pay $40 a month, so that's, you know, I believe in it enough to do that, to pay twice, but. Start a group, and it be a weekly roundtable just inside of AIR from engaged members saying, let's just talk about what we're doing for this conversation. I don't know that it's going to change, Scott. Adjusters have amnesia every Tuesday where they forget what they learned last week, and they're going to say the same thing again next week. It's just how they play, and they win. They win every day doing the same thing. So I think we just have to stand up and document and win our customer over. And that's harder. It's not that easy though, because they've got.
And I think that there's more non-preferred vendors than there are preferred vendors out there. So I don't think that's the reason is there's preferred vendors. I don't get the statement. It's hard to get off of program work. It's easy to get off of program work if you want to do that. It's just people getting comfortable getting that work coming from the program. But it's a lot easier to go satisfy your client, work for your client, build relationships. We all do it every single day. So I don't understand the hard part of getting off a program. It may suck for a little bit, but it ain't hard. So trying to figure out, you know, where the argument really has to go.
Well, listen,
let me jump in and address that. It's hard because of the owner. It always comes back to the owner. The owner has gotten fat and lazy. In the 10, 15, 20 years, he's gotten program work. And these are, I get these calls. They're more infrequent now, but the calls from, and they can even be, you know, mom and pops who existed for 20 years, 25 years, 30 years on program work. The last program they were on dried up, and they're saying we're out of business in 6 months if we don't do something. And I can't help them. This is a call they should have made 5 years ago. But that's what it is. It is always the owner and their own either laziness or short-sightedness. That's why it's hard. It's the only reason it's hard.
So it's not hard. It's just lazy.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't want people to get scared to think if they're on program work, it's hard to get off because if it's
I can get behind that.
Comfort level, you know, it's easy. So it's easy to build relationships outside of there. Yeah. It's one of those things where whatever you want to go, agents, plumbers, adjusters, there's so many avenues you can go get work. So I always hear, oh, it's so hard. I mean, I did the program work and I did non-program work, and I took ourselves off of all the program work. It wasn't a hard choice. So I mean, that's my own mentality on it. So like I said, if for the people that are saying, oh, I have to do this, you don't. And if you're a program vendor, I got nothing wrong with that. Like, you do what is best for your business, your family, your employees. But we can't have these arguments that don't really make much sense. I might be creating that argument right now myself.
Well, Scott, I think you're right. There's also the argument, okay, back to Scott's point that there might be more people that are not on programs at all than there are. I find that the terrible restorers are probably worse for our industry than the programs. The guys that go out in the one truck in the truck, the guy that looks at a $3,000 job because it really should be $3,000 to $4,000, and he puts a $12,000 on it, or even the opposite, does it for $885 because he's one truck in a truck. Listen, there's always going to be one truck in the truck. Those aren't the enemies, but they're diluting down the pool. So I mean, those are it's multi things, but for us to say that a business that can't be run without program or all organic profitably, that sounds good to say, except that I know examples of companies that are 2.5 million, 35% net, zero program, collecting in 30 days. It is possible, but you have to do a few things, including process, including, maybe it's liens, maybe it's this, maybe it's onboarding a customer, not get emotionally attached and fight and just say, stand up for your bill, win your customer. I get it. And some people are in different markets and it's a little harder. And that's obviously a multiplier of that situation. But there are examples out there. Some people just said, I'm just going to leave the residential world and I'm going to pursue only commercial. I understand that I probably have to go backwards before I can go forwards, but I'll end up doing more commercial with almost no residential. And it ends up working out and they do more volume, profitable, but less number of jobs. I mean, you don't like the game, I guess get out of it, But that's not the answer for everybody. Did we lose John? No, there he is. I think you're right, though, Scott. Is it's not hard. It just takes work, and we do live in a society right now where we're kind of expecting things to be easy because all the information's right there at our fingers. Why? What did I post this morning? Knowledge isn't power. The implementation of the knowledge is the power. You've got to use it once you've got it. So good stuff there. Real good stuff.
I mentioned this in the training that, there's a lot to be said about the programs that did step up because they did actually really help to legitimize the industry. They've made everybody step up with their standards, with the right insurances that they needed. You have all the yahoos that are out there with a $600 Hartford policy, pretending like they're carpet cleaners doing fire water restoration. And they have no pollution insurance. They don't know what they're doing. They don't have any accreditations. So you got to remember that was one thing that the programs did bring to the table, that you guys got all these crazy insurance requirements, but it was in case people screwed up that the insurance companies would pay for your screw up. So maybe we have to look at what else the programs offered besides being a pain in the ass.
Well, we also have to quit talking about what we yesterday and what we could have done about yesterday, and we got to talk about what's left of today, and then especially tomorrow, and do something about it. We just can't blame yesterday's forefathers. We can't blame the program guys. But you're right, Jennifer. Through one lens, you can say, where would we be if there had not been some of that, and where would not been? We might not have documentation like we do now. But listen, what does it look like 2.0, 3.0, right? And that's where we are. And I know what we're doing and arguing with adjusters every day and spending, who thinks they spend more than 12 hours a week trying to get paid on their jobs themselves as the owner? I know I hear about it all the time. Yeah, Chad. I mean, that's valuable time. That's big money dollars going out the window when you start evaluating how much your time is worth. And look, there are some small operators that say, I don't have those problems. When you get to 1 million, you will, right? Your receivables will creep up to 250,000 and you'll be like, oh God. So, well, listen, I don't know that everybody's going to make it to win, whatever win looks like, but I sure want to take as many people with us as we can on the bus. We got some empty seats right here. But it's good stuff so far. We got 10 more minutes, 15 more minutes. We got anybody new here? I know Frank. Frank, how you doing, buddy? I've seen Frank a few times. Chad, have you ever made a round table before?
Yes.
You have. I saw somebody named Trey a while ago. I think we scared him off. We scared Trey.
I do want to add something, Clark. I mean,
Yeah.
at the end of the day, I mean, I don't think all program work is a bad thing. I mean, we're on 2 programs now, and get good quality work and get no kickback. I don't think all program work is a bad deal at the end of the day. I just think a lot of times, you know, you have to diversify your program work / you know, the work that you're getting on your own that's not from program work. But we're on 2 programs now that we get great quality work from, and we get very, very little kickback at all, if any. I don't think that all program work, I think a lot of the times we get on a kick where it's, you know, program work's terrible, you know, can't do this or that, or, you know, they want to cut my bill or whatever. I think at the end of the day, not all program work is like that. You know, being on, you know, a program that we're on that I couldn't remember the last, you know, out of 50 jobs, maybe one time we've got any kickback on something. And it was a simple question of, why did you do this? And I think a lot of times people think that these adjusters are calling just to be a bully, or, you know, to be a punk, or whatever you want to call them for the day. And I think at the end of the day, I think if you answer their questions and you have a legitimate reason, I don't see a lot of kickback on program work, and we're on 2.
Hey, Chad.
Can I speak to that real quick, Clark?
Yeah. First up, Chad. Are you still there, Chad? We lost Chad. Go ahead, Scott.
So yeah, I mean, I don't have anything against programs either. Programs get brought up all the time. I think more or less in an argument of a carrier just trying to say, you know, I can get a guy to do it for this price, right? So if your company model is program work, or if you're doing program work, rightfully so, you're going to give a discount to the carrier. That's going to be normal. So I only bring up program work when the carrier tries to get a non-program vendor to, you know, work at the same rate or price as a non-program work that they're not giving, or as a program vendor that they're giving, you know, volumes of work to. And we tell the adjusters all the time, cool, you want me to not charge you that emergency service call, throw me 20 jobs a month. I'll be happy to give you a discount. We got a relationship then. So and I don't want it to be a bash on program work. Like I said, I did both, and I don't think program vendors are terrible, and I don't think that program work is terrible. I think the hardest part about being on a program is managing it to where you have enough non-program work too, in case they want to make that one change, because that one change could just be you being gone and out of business. But it's just creating an argument back to the carrier of, hey, you know what, we're not your preferred vendor. We don't have that agreement that we can't charge that price, and having it in a professional manner to where you're justifying your invoice and getting paid at the end of the day, instead of just giving them the farm because, hey, they had an objection, you don't know how to respond to it, so we're just going to go ahead and eliminate that from the invoice. If that makes sense. It's not I don't want it to be a bash on program vendors or program work. I don't feel that way.
What I wanted to point out, and I think Chad, we lost Chad. I don't see him. Chad, and you know, Scott, you live in Southern California. Is that right? Scott, I'm sorry, Scott, you live in Southern California?
Yeah, SoCal. Sorry, I lost you for a minute.
So Chad lives in North Georgia, almost in the mountains. And I think there is a degree of the region saturation dictates how they treat you. Does anybody experience that? Like Parker, is Parker still here? How they treat you if you're about the only choice in town is much different than that where they've got 100 options. Would you agree with that, anyone? No, maybe.
Yes, I agree with that 100%. That is. But then also the other thing that falls into play here is, does everybody know their numbers and what he may be thinking he's making great, but because you already know what the end result is.
The revenue, the top line intoxication. Okay. Listen, I don't know that we solved it, but I'm glad we talked about it. Parker's frozen, or he's just staring at us like really, really well.
I think he's passed on.
Let's talk about that's his soul left behind.
Clark, I think this raises an interesting point because when we're thinking about getting everybody on air, I admit I've only been doing on Facebook for a couple weeks. I haven't even taken the time to look on the AIR's website to see what's involved in getting on. If you would like to grow that group, from my perspective, it seems like we need to have broad appeal for people to see why being part of this group is so beneficial, whether that be their background from program work, but obviously more importantly, focusing on trying to get away from a situation where somebody is dictating to us what should and shouldn't be done. That speaks for everybody in the industry. We're all going to deal with that at one point or another. So we need to figure out a way that each week in roundtables, we're coming up with topics of discussion that take even just 1 point a week. This is what we are working on to make sure that all of us are unanimous in thought moving forward. Even it doesn't have to be grandiose. Even something as what do we do on a weekly basis to market ourselves so that we are not dependent on a program, that we are getting business organically. I think having topics where people can log on and see that they benefit from watching what's going on and from listening to everybody's input will help people to see the benefit of being part of that group. So rather than worrying about the things that didn't work for us, and I understand that we all need to just vent sometimes because it does get so frustrating, we just start picking topics and say, this week is what we're going to work on. If you would like to be part of it, log in.
I like it. I mean, you got my vote. I mean, I've never censored anybody that has a great idea. So let's see what it looks like.
Let me
start next week.
I agree with everything you're saying, Cal. We've got to do it with more than 20 people, even though I commend you all for one, remembering that we moved the roundtable to Thursday, and two, for foregoing the Democratic presidential candidate debate. I know that's hard to miss that. Where this happens more effectively is in chapters, because our local chapter, once a month we get on a Zoom call, and we not only, so each month someone presents a recent scope that they did, and they let everybody in the call pick it apart and suggest, and those have been so eye-opening. We actually stole the idea from a franchise system that does the same thing within their own regions. But then we talk about, well, did this adjuster say this, and did they allow that? Because we all want to be on the same page. We never want to be pitted against each other by adjusters or TPAs or whatever. But it's more effective when regionally you have restorers meeting together, having these conversations. Unfortunately, we can't do it 20 of us once a week on a national scale. We've got to concentrate that down to regions, and then it becomes hugely effective. The reason I get so excited about this local chapter is I'm getting to watch how I can then go to the Washington chapter and say, hey, here's what we've tried, and it's been phenomenal. Try this. And then they can come to me and say, hey, we tried this out and added this to the mix, and it's been very effective. So I totally agree. Go ahead.
I agree with what you're saying. What I see as the issue is you're trying to get to the point where you have enough people that you can even create a chapter. And that's where using platforms like this roundtable could maybe stimulate the interest to make people see, hey, there is something beneficial from being part of that group. I agree completely. the local down to earth guys who are each other's backyards would be a lot. That is the ultimate goal, to get us all connected so that we're doing the same thing, all playing the same game.
Yeah.
But to get to the point where we can grow that network, there has to be something they see before they commit.
Hey, Cal.
Yes, sir.
Over the last 5 months, 6 months, I've traveled to 7 cities, but we've started 5 chapters. And I say started, built, like had a little micro get together summit in each city or each region. We had, and John did one of them in Idaho, but we had somewhere between 22 and some cases 41 people show up. So we've got the people. What we've lacking is what next and being diligent. We've written the structure, we've published it. Where we're at now, just to be really, really transparent, is we do want those 20 or 41 to transition into members of AIR to put money where their mouth is. Just like BNI would not let you come in the second meeting or the third meeting. I don't know what the number is, but it's a little different. It's 2 meetings. Okay, thanks, Kristen. It's the leader of that chapter has to be a dynamic enough person to convince 40 competitors that this is something they need to do. And that's picking the right leader of a chapter is the first important thing we're supposed to do. And I think we've done a really good job. I think that, but when it comes down to the ask, some people are like, don't think I'm in a position to ask people to turn over. So we just pull back and say, okay, what do we do? Reevaluate. We have a director of chapters that's 2 people actually, or 1 and 2 just for backup, just not to run them, but to help keep the structure and the coordination and accountability of let's make sure we're moving forward. We're okay to fail and come back and regroup and say that didn't work, but it's doing nothing is not going to work, because right now is the best time. We've got momentum, we've got engagement, we've got power, we've got voices, and we've got ears. In waiting, people will move along to the next thing or onto something else and say, well, that's just another thing that just didn't work. And I think we all have a history of stuff that didn't work in our careers. I would like people to sit here and say, finally, I found a home. And I think we all want that. That's the problem. I know we have it in us to do it. We have to get organized. We can all talk and wave the flags, but we have to organize, be very nimble and agile and do it. And we're there. We're right there on, some markets are doing great. But anyway, I'm getting the morning sign. We got to wrap it up. I want to say one more thing, John. I know it's 9:30. We preluded in the group today. We're talking to the publishers of Delay, Deny, Defend, and we actually had some emails go back and forth. We're working on minimum numbers and stuff, but we're probably going to be able to get a republish and get those prices way, way down. I know a lot of people said, hey, we're real interested in doing it. We want that book. And it's going to be me and John putting our money up to buy them. We're going to buy a bunch of books and hope we sell them. But, it's just a good book. We're just trying to get the price down to where it's not, we want to be
$535.
We want to be under 100 if we can. But now they know they've got something on the market that's hot, and they're going to try to, so we're working on that. But that's just another thing is, who else has called and said, hey, how do we do this and how do we put our money where our mouth is? And I want people to believe in this, not because of John or me or Kristen or Cal. I want them to believe that it's wholesome, it's good, it's going to work. So I'll question the message every time, John.
Fair enough.
Hey guys, I just have a quick comment. So maybe a different perspective. So my biggest concern with the Facebook group, I'm relatively new to the group. My biggest concern with the Facebook group is really you don't know who's in there. And it's too easy to just answer 3 questions and you're in, right? I know you guys need members for AIR, but I don't want AIR to be that. I don't want 4,000 members in AIR and they just become members because they pay $40. You have to hold them to a different standard. There has to be a certain level. I almost think that you guys have to make it harder for people to join AIR and keep them accountable so that, you know that you're part of, if you're part of the group, you can feel comfortable sharing with people in the group, and you know there's not going to be people who's going to be just there trying to look for ways to take advantage of you, right? So that's my main concern. It's just how can we keep that quality there, so that when you're in, then oh, I can comfortably refer all these guys. It's not just because we all believe in the same thing, right? And it's not just because, oh yeah, I paid that $40 to join.
Hey, Robert, I will actually work on, I'm glad you said that. I'll work on publishing. I have a process of vetting, and that includes who else do they know in the industry. I go to LinkedIn and check out who people are. I take AIR a lot differently serious than I do. Everyone is in there. And by the way, we, of the 200 members that we have or so in AIR, I've turned down 45 or 50 that just didn't even seem relevant to the industry or just were too vague and wouldn't answer any inquiries about who are you. So I will publish the process that I go through. We're not going to do background checks, or we're not going to do that, but yeah. I do check.
But we debated that hotly, didn't we?
We did. And it's not impossible. I mean, you could get a background check really, really simple, but then, Robert, I don't want to exclude someone who had when they were 18 at spring break in Fort Lauderdale, got in trouble. I don't want to be the deciding factor of what is allowable. I don't want to know that somebody had 2 ounces of pot and got in trouble. That doesn't mean they're not good at restorers. So that gets a little shaky. But I'm real quick to remove people. I'll tell you that. We had a rebel last week that was screwed people over in the storms, and I found out about it, and there was enough cases that it happened. But it takes a good day for me to kind of do some background checks on some people, unless we know each other. Like I knew you, and I know Jennifer, she came in, and Kristen. I mean, people that we are known associates. But if it's a new name we never heard of, that's a flag, and it takes a little bit digging a little deeper. So maybe I'll publish that process, and it'll give a little security to we're kind of not letting the fox in the hen house, so to speak.
So I have a question, Clark. If you're talking about doing diligent vetting, which is great, I vet a couple of my pages also. But what if like the guy was doing bad jobs, but then that was one guy throwing that guy under the bus? I mean, what would be your criteria for saying you're out of here? I mean, are you gonna have standards for that?
So
people that they're signing the group, because we have a group that we belong to, and you sign knowing and agreeing that if you do something, they can kick you out.
Well, see you later, John. It's just about getting real organized, Jennifer. I think that needs to be a panel of unbiased people, 6 or 7 people who will take a case. I will tell you about the Rebel group, Jennifer. We've had people who've been reported as being scumbags, and by the time you talk to that person and dig in, it's literally a lack of education. The job they were doing was what they learned from who they used to work for, and the very reason that they're in the group is to get better. First step that somebody makes to improve is coming in and asking for some help or asking the dumb questions. So I'm not quick to remove. I usually try to dig out the intentional or the lack of education. But criminal has been sued for fraud 3 times and had 4 company names. Probably not a good fit. You got to prove to us that you're better. But we don't have it written yet. But again, early, I think that's a very good idea. But I would like it not to be one person's decision.
Right.
Like a circle of 6 people like Parker, who's smiling scarily, of like, say, I want to look at this unbiased and objectively as an educated CR in this industry. Maybe we direct them to some better training. Maybe, you know what, you messed up and you did something bad, but that doesn't mean you have to repeat it. So that's something and we see that with posts all the time. We see dumpster fires start up, and we're not quick to censor and shut them down because they can become educational. The right people come in and leave enough wisdom that person leaves that post saying, wow, how many jobs have I done that wrong? That won't happen again. So, but I love that thought, and I would love to have something. Kristen's got the last comment.
I would just add to Robert's comment that while the Facebook page is not perfect, we do try to vet people that come in. It's not just 3 questions and you're in. We stalk them on LinkedIn. We view their profiles. We make sure they're actually a human and have something to do with the restoration industry. So there is more of a screening process than just type yes 3 times and you're in the group.
Yeah, I actually looked it up the other day and looking at the statistics on it, and I think it was something like 200 people in the last month were accepted, but like 100 and some were declined.
Wow.
You know, Robert, sometimes Robert,
all the time.
Sometimes people sit in that little lounge for a week because sometimes Kristen or whoever else is doing the vetting will reach out to that person in a message saying, "Who are you? Why are you here?" If they don't answer, they just sit there and stew, and they don't come into the group until they kind of justify who they are. And so there is a little bit of a level. They've got like 4 of you that are letting people in, like different time zones, Kristen.
Yeah, I think there's 4 of us.
And there's about 10 or 12 people a day that come in now. And like Parker said, I'd say
205 people approved and 113 people declined. The reason I looked it up is because there's another page that will remain nameless that posted their new members, and it was all accepted. I think there was only 3 declined, and I was like, huh, interesting.
Yeah, it's never been about the quantity; it's been about the quality, Robert. Right?
Yep. Yeah. So, to me, like if people doing bad jobs and stuff like that, those are education. Those are not as much of a concern. My main concern is more of people doing sinister stuff. Like they're taking snapshots or whatever you post, sending it to the adjuster, or they're reporting you to OSHA or whatever, just because, there's a picture of somebody without the proper PPE, or, all those kind of stuff that probably, should be, grounds for termination or whatever.
Listen, here's the last comment. Cal, you're going to get a trophy for today. Why don't you read your question? Why don't you read your comment in the chat?
Well, I just said new members need to give you their IICRC number. You need to know the 35th word on page 47 of the S500. I was blown away at the number of people who asked for quotes.
A free copy.
Just the past week.
Oh, yeah.
Like, isn't that the foundation of education in this industry? And you don't even have the book. Now, I'll be honest with you. I don't have a tangible copy of the book, but I've at least covered it. And I
could only give you 1 of 2 of those things, though.
Exactly. I just get a feeling that a lot of these folks have never even been to an IICRC class, and that could be part of our problem too.
It's like people claiming they're a Christian, but they've never had a Bible.
Exactly.
Well, the last thing, Robert, and anyone else, the 3 questions are only relevant if people get invited in. Like if Cal finds another person and invites them in himself, like pulls them in, they don't see the 3 questions, and they're just kind of sitting there with no answers. And that takes a little bit of more of who are they friends with, what is their Facebook page. If they've got like Nazi signs on their Facebook page, they're probably not a good fit. And that has happened, by the way. It's a true story. But that is it, man. I'm going to go play with some kids. I hope everybody has an amazing time. Cal, will you get with, I don't know, somebody, and let's do a topic a week. But I certainly say that's a chapter leader should come in here every week and say, this is what we worked on. We killed these topics and blah, 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 or this month. But we got it.
I think that's a great idea. I think you said you've already got 4 or 5 chapter leaders. I can't remember what you said. I think we need to set an itinerary for the focus of the discussion and know it a month ahead of time. And everybody in that chapter can discuss what their basically an outline for the night's discussion, and then everybody can chime in. We need every one of our discussions needs to have a very specific and definite purpose if we're going to move forward.
All right. Peace out. Everybody have a good one.